broke the law at all. President Xi is meeting with President Putin in Russia.
But we are concerned that instead, China will reiterate calls for a ceasefire that leaves Russian forces inside Ukraine's sovereign territory.
We need to get to the bottom of whether or not this is a supervisory problem, a regulatory problem, a bank mismanagement problem, perhaps all three.
They try to say it's not a bailout because they say it's going to be paid for by banking fees. But who pays the banking fees? Customers.
And welcome to Red and Blue. I'm Caitlin Huey-Burns in Washington. Thank you for joining us. A possible indictment of former President Trump by the Manhattan District Attorney is sending shockwaves through Washington. Over the weekend, Trump claimed he would be arrested Tuesday, calling on his supporters to protest if that happens. A New York grand jury is looking into whether Trump falsified business records to hide campaign finance violations. It's tied to alleged hush money payments made to adult film star Stormy Daniels. CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent Robert Costa joins us now from Manhattan. Bob, good to see you. Thanks for being here. I know you have been in Manhattan outside all day since early this morning. Can you kind of set the scene for us a little bit? What has it been like, and what have you learned through your reporting today?
Good to be with you, Caitlin. There have been minimal protesters here today because the grand jury just behind us in the Manhattan Criminal Court continues to do its work. This is a wait-and-see moment for the Trump investigation here in the city of New York. You see the District Attorney Alvin Bragg continuing to bring in witnesses. Just moments ago, one of the final witnesses in this investigation, Bob Costello, a longtime lawyer for Rudy Giuliani, came in to testify. Michael Cohen, the key witness in this investigation, was also available to testify, though his lawyer, Lanny Davis, told us that he did not go in and speak once again to the grand jury. This is a time when a district attorney is likely wrapping things up, but we still don't have an exact timeline or time frame for when an indictment could come of the former president.
And speaking of the former president, have we heard from him today? How is he, kind of preparing for this possible indictment?
The former president has been speaking out about one of his rivals in the 2024 discussion, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, on social media, saying that DeSantis was not perhaps supportive enough in coming to Trump's defense. DeSantis made remarks to reporters earlier today where he criticized the district attorney here in New York, but he also made a pointed remark about this entire investigation, saying to the effect, something to the effect of, I'm not really sure how hush money payments go when it comes to an adult film star. So you see a bit of a veiled shot across the political bow in the 2024 race from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis that prompted President Trump, the former president, to speak out.
Yeah, Bob, on that note, how do you sense this is kind of shaping Republican Party politics at this point? Are we seeing Republicans rally to his defense? I know you and I have talked a lot about how Republicans are often in this precarious situation where they want to wait and see how things play out, but we have these, daily almost headlines.
Caitlin, you've been out on the trail. I've been out on the trail. Voters are still supportive of President Trump generally. They like the former president. At the same time, they're looking at their options. And so when you look at the political implications here based on my reporting, talking to strategists, talking to voters, it's clear that it's not exactly certain that this is going to elevate Trump for a long time or be a long-term vulnerability for him. Think back to the Mar-a-Lago search by the FBI for those classified records. It seemed to be some kind of seismic moment in Trump's attempts for a comeback. It came and went. The investigation continues. This seems to be a seismic moment, of course, if a former president is indicted, a major American political and legal moment. But at the same time, Trump faces so many other investigations in Georgia and especially that federal grand jury in Washington of January 6th.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Bob. I'm wondering, since you have been covering all of these investigations, I know you've spent a lot of time in Georgia, too. How does this particular one in New York related to those hush money payments kind of fit in the broader picture of the indictments that Trump is facing?
This is one that has been latent for some time. It was not expected in Trump's inner circle that this would be the case that would lead to a possible first indictment. They've been watching Georgia closely, keeping an eye, of course, on the grand jury in Washington, partly because the district attorney here, the previous one, Cyrus Vance, did not move forward with an indictment when he was in office. Mark Pomerantz, a former prosecutor at the criminal court just behind us, he wrote a book criticizing the office here for not moving on an indictment of former President Trump. So this has been a long time coming to reach a point where an indictment of Trump seems very possible, though, again, the timing still seems to be up in the air.
Up in the air, indeed. Well, we will look forward to your continued reporting, Bob Costa, outside the courthouse. We appreciate your time and reporting. Thank you so much. And meanwhile, we have House Republican lawmakers attending a retreat in Florida, but the possible indictment of former President Trump is really dominating all of the conversation there. You have multiple House Republicans, including Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan, sending a letter to the Manhattan DA demanding documents and testimony. They wrote, quote, "You are reportedly about to engage in an unprecedented abuse of prosecutorial authority. Here's what lawmakers at the retreat are saying about a possible indictment."
President Trump announces he's running for president, and Shazam! We're gonna some bookkeeping error from 7 years ago is misdemeanor is now what they're going after. So it makes absolutely no sense.
What we're dealing with here now is a rogue, left-wing, radical prosecutor who, by the way, refuses to prosecute serious crimes in his state, who now has decided for political reasons to go after a former president.
I think that everyone in this country, Republican, Democrat, and others, should be outraged that people will actually use our justice system against their political adversaries.
All right, so for more on all of this, CBS News congressional reporter Zach Hudak joins us now from Orlando. Zach, good to see you. I know you have been following these Republicans all day, attending press conferences, talking to lawmakers. I mean, this is a policy retreat aimed at kind of setting the stage for governance in this next Congress, but yet Trump is looming over everything, it seems.
That's right, Caitlin. This is something that has frustrated Republicans at this retreat and at the last two retreats. They come here and they plan to push out their messaging. They plan to get their messaging out to their lower-ranking members, send them out for press conferences with us, and allow them to explain how these larger Republican policies will affect their constituents specifically. But what we've dealt with this year and the past 2 years is that every press conference that happens, we, the media, are asking about Donald Trump. And I think that's pretty frustrating to these Republicans. But what we're hearing from them, as you just played out, is basically an attack on Alvin Bragg and an attack on the idea of indicting a former president. They are painting this as a political witch hunt and something that needs to be stopped as soon as possible.
Yeah, the more things change, the more they stay the same, as is apparent with this conference meeting. I mean, Zach, to that point, I mentioned that letter that that investigators on Capitol Hill want to kind of go after. What exactly are they wanting here in terms of the DA?
A big point they're making, Caitlin, is that it's been years that this information has been out there. The Manhattan DA's office has been investigating Trump since at least 2018. And we're hearing Republicans say now they want to know why, now that the former president has announced another run for president, are you finally making a move here? What has changed? And secondarily, what on the federal level, what resources are being used? There are federal grants that go to local law enforcement. And additionally, we heard Jim Jordan bring up earlier another angle that he thinks there's a chance that the special counsel's federal investigation into Donald Trump is informing this local investigation, and that's a major concern of his as well. We don't know yet if he'll subpoena the Manhattan DA, but it seems like that would likely be the next step.
Wow, a lot to mull over there. I mean, Zach, I know you've been covering Congress for a while. You know many of these lawmakers. You've been talking to them for years. I'm curious kind of how you are assessing in your conversations with them or what they've been telling you, kind of how Trump is, in fact, shaping the party still. Are they eager to rush to his defense? Are they trying to, show some distance? What's that kind of revealed itself to be like?
You know, Caitlin, we are still seeing them be very eager to rush to his defense, and I don't think you have to look too hard to find out why. We saw just the other day, Ron DeSantis punted a question about the potential indictment of the former president, and today the former president issued a statement bashing him, saying he was too weak to take a stand and defend this political witch hunt. However, at the same time, 2 years ago, when Liz Cheney was still the GOP conference chair, when she was running this event, we were right near Orlando in the same area, and a major breaking point happened for her and the party there when, in a press conference, she was asked if Donald Trump is still the leader of the Republican Party. She said he was not, that the current elected leaders, Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, were the leaders of the party. At the time, this is early 2021, that was kind of the final nail in the coffin for Liz Cheney. That was seen as disloyalty to Trump and, by extension, to the party. And a mere couple weeks later, we saw her be ousted from her conference chair spot. Today, Jose Diaz-Balart, a local Florida representative, was asked pretty much that same question. And he prefaced it saying he respects Donald Trump, but then quickly said, Kevin McCarthy and our elected leaders are in charge. So you do see this movement away from total default to Trump. Still some fear of not defending him, but there is not, de facto, we turn to Donald Trump to get our messaging.
Yeah, that's so fascinating, Zach. And we showed a clip or a screenshot of that story that you wrote at the time. We know how that panned out for Liz Cheney, but we also know this is going to be a storyline to follow through the 2024 elections, not only House Republicans having to do that dance, but fellow potential 2024 candidates as well. Zach Hudak, thank you so much for your reporting. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Caitlin.
And as the war in Ukraine rages on, Chinese President Xi Jinping kicked off a 3-day visit to Russia. We'll discuss that growing partnership with Senate Intelligence Committee Chairman Mark Warner. That's next. You're streaming Red and Blue, reporting across the political divide.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
I always tell people that Twitter would not be Twitter without Black Twitter. It's just us being in fellowship with each other.
And there becomes a conversation you don't want to be left out of.
People really started to recognize the power of activism on Twitter.
Based on that one tweet, the hashtag #OscarsSoWhite was trending around the world.
If anything has really powered Black Twitter, it's been humor.
If your food ain't right, we're going to tell you about that too.
We tend to create change, create culture and cool.
That's how movements happen on Black Twitter and go beyond more than that.
Black Twitter, the Twitterverse that changed a generation. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
You ready?
A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Gender.
I did not realize that you could change your gender.
Realizing how you feel.
You can be a boy, sometimes you feel like a girl, sometimes you feel like both.
Redefining who you are.
Identify as trans.
Gender fluid.
Non-binary and queer.
Is the idea of gender a thing of the past?
And to be yourself, always, no matter what anyone says, I love you.
Are the kids all right? Gender. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
Or you can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
The news doesn't have to always be depressing.
What do you love about running?
It can be uplifting. That human connection that we create on the broadcast every night is incredibly important.
And welcome back to Red and Blue. There has been concern across the globe of China taking a more active role in its support of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Today, those concerns were amplified with Chinese President Xi Jinping arriving in Moscow for a 3-day visit. The leader kicked off a series of face-to-face meetings today with his Russian counterpart. Putin said the pair will discuss Xi's plan, his 12-point plan to settle the war in Ukraine, but that plan does not call for a withdrawal of Russian troops from Ukraine. Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke about this earlier today.
Calling for a ceasefire that does not include the removal of Russian forces from Ukrainian territory would effectively be supporting the ratification of Russian conquest. It would recognize Russia's attempts to seize a sovereign neighbor's territory by force. It would enable Russia to further entrench positions in Ukraine, and a ceasefire now, without a durable solution, would allow President Putin to rest and refit his troops and then restart the war at a time more advantageous to Russia.
Joining us now is Virginia's senior Senator Mark Warner, who chairs the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. Senator, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. So this meeting that Putin and Xi are having, how concerned are you, and should there be any consequences?
Well, I'm very concerned. Here it is, literally days after President Putin was indicted by the International Criminal Court, that President Xi, another authoritarian leader, comes to give him, kind of try to buck him up in his leadership role. I'm very concerned as well whether China would take another step in terms of actually supplying Russia with arms. I think both would be awful circumstances, frankly, for the whole world. And it, again, begs the question why this is so important and why I cannot believe there's some wannabe American political leaders that somehow say what happens in Ukraine isn't important for our country. I mean, that's crazy. Putin will not be satisfied with Ukraine. That would put in danger Poland and the Baltic states, NATO nations, where we are solemnly committed. And the idea that Putin could take over a sovereign nation should not be allowed. And at the same time, if you are concerned about the rising power of China, the Communist Party in China, and Xi, any kind of success Putin has gives Xi more potential in terms of taking on Taiwan. So this is not a good circumstance. These are two authoritarian leaders that do not allow any freedoms that we enjoy in their respective countries.
And Senator, speaking of China and staying with that for a second, I do want to talk a little bit about TikTok, because you have supported bipartisan legislation that would essentially give the Secretary of Commerce the authority to ban TikTok. The CEO, of course, is set to testify on the Hill on Thursday. I think a lot of people will be interested in what he has to say. What does he need to answer?
Well, Caitlin, let's first of all step back and look at this a little more holistically. National security anymore is not just tanks and guns and ships and planes. It's things like communications networks. It's things like who makes the advancements in social media, artificial intelligence, quantum computing. And over the last few years in our country, we've seen foreign technology pose national security threats. And we've kind of approached this in a one-off way. We saw it with the Russian software company Kaspersky 5 or 6 years ago. We saw it a few years back with Huawei, the Chinese telecom provider. Now we're seeing it with TikTok. And my legislation, and I'm proud to have 10 Democrats, 10 Republicans, I know this is red to blue, this is as bipartisan as you can get, that says TikTok, we ought to have a rules-based approach, not just for TikTok, but from any foreign technology from an adversarial nation like Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, that poses a national security risk. And we ought to give the Secretary of Commerce the tools to address that. Now, why do I think TikTok? 2 items. One, TikTok's very popular. Let me acknowledge that. 150 million Americans, they're now claiming about 90 minutes a day. That's a lot of time. 2 things that really rise to the point that this is a national security issue in my mind. Every person who's on TikTok, they are absorbing that data about you. One of the brilliant things about TikTok is it learns what you like even before you know it. So that data, I believe, is residing back in China. Now, TikTok will say that will never be the case, but plain Chinese law, and TikTok is owned by ByteDance, a Chinese company, plain Chinese law passed in 2016 requires every company in China, first and foremost, to be loyal to the Communist Party, not to their customers, not to their consumers, not to their shareholders, but to the Communist Party. So that potential of data being taken and manipulated concerns me greatly. The second piece is these users of TikTok, they're on 90 minutes a day. And the truth is, they can have that video content manipulated. And the best evidence of that is that, there is a version of TikTok in China that young people look at. It is completely different. It supports science and engineering and study hard, very different than what kids in our country and around the world are seeing. So I think that ability to be a propaganda tool is a concern. And final point I just want to make is that, it's not just some folks in Congress raising this. Canada has put a ban in place. The United Kingdom just recently did. The Dutch said, if you're in the media, don't use TikTok. India has completely banned the application. So this is a concern I think other democracies around the world are concerned about.
Yeah, but you do kind of underscore the challenge there in saying how many people are on it, how long they're using it for. I do want to switch gears a little bit, though, and turn to Silicon Valley Bank.
Let me just say, Caitlin, really quickly on this. If there was a divestiture that really protects the data, we'll take a look at that. But if it's banned, there will be other alternatives. It could be an American company, it could be an Indian company, it could be a French company. I believe the marketplace will provide that same kind of video creativity, because there's a lot of creative things on TikTok. So I don't think the folks will be left with nothing.
We'll see if that encourages some innovation there as well. Turning to Silicon Valley Bank, though, because I know you are a busy senator, you're on a lot of these big issues. At that Senate Finance Committee hearing last week, you said that this would go down as the first internet-driven bank run. Is it possible to prevent something like that then from happening, and how?
Well, Caitlin, twofold here. One, and I want to get all the facts and find out what caused this. I do think kind of basic banking oversight, what's called safety and soundness prudential regulation, whether this bank had been a $5 billion bank, a $200 billion bank, a $500 billion bank, the regulators and the management, it appears to me, messed up. They didn't manage their interest rates correctly. That's banking 101. The second piece that I did raise, and I don't have a good answer on what to do, is, I was a venture capitalist before I was in politics. So I believe in the value of venture capital, starting up companies. But there were some pretty irresponsible venture capitalists. And this bank banked almost all the VCs across the country that literally Wednesday night said the equivalent of shouting fire in a crowded theater. They told all their companies, get out of the bank. This bank lost $42 billion in 5 hours. That was the equivalent of 25 cents on every dollar of deposit. No set of rules, no set of capital requirements or liquidity requirements could prevent that. Now, how you do that, how you grapple with that, is there a regulatory review process? I don't have an answer yet, but I do worry that when you have everything accelerated by technology, you really put places in a difficult situation. Just again, in reference, the largest bank failure prior to this was Washington Mutual back during the financial crisis. It lost $16 billion over 10 days of people taking out deposits versus $42 billion in a smaller bank in 6 hours. How we grapple with this beyond a little more responsible behavior from depositors is a question I've not heard a good answer for yet.
But you disagree with some of your Democratic colleagues who say that the rollback of regulations, which you supported that rollback in 2018, was the cause of that. You don't think that is the case?
Listen, I have not seen any evidence of that. Matter of fact, the Dan Trillo, who is a very progressive former member of the Fed, he recently said he didn't think that rollback in terms of some of the stress tests and some of the capital requirements was actually the causation. This was, I think, basic safety and soundness regulation gone awry. If it ends up being partially the cause, then I'm all for putting as many protections as possible in place to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again. My belief is today that the regulators, again, regardless of size of the bank, should have spotted this. But then that problem that kind of haunts me, I think this kind of shocked most of the, or at least Washington regulators come that Thursday. When things happen this quickly, how do you put any safety and soundness in place that really is going to guard against 25 cents on every dollar?
And just quickly, Senator, with the Fed expected to raise interest rates yet again, are you confident? Do you have confidence in Jerome Powell?
Listen, I believe that Jay Powell has managed this inflation issue fairly well, tough on both ends. He gets grief from both sides. And frankly, the fact that he, along with the Treasury and with the FDIC, came out with those emergency efforts to guarantee depositors, to make sure your money is safe in these banks, and some of the other tools, I think made sense.
All right. All right, we'll have to leave it there. Senator Mark Warner, I know we'll be talking to you a lot over the next few weeks. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. And coming up, former President Trump's possible indictment may be adding fuel to the 2024 fire in more ways than one. How Florida Governor Ron DeSantis reacted to the news ahead of a possible nomination showdown. You're streaming Red and Blue.
An original documentary from CBS reports. Controversial Congressman George Santos.
Why won't you answer our questions?
How did he manage to get elected?
Thank you very much, and God bless you, and God bless the USA.
George Santos' campaign was a campaign of deceit, lies, fabrication.
And who is he, really?
I knew him as Anthony DeVolder from Queens.
Really, who he is, he's a fraud.
I compare him to the Tinder swindler.
From people who know him, the truth, the facts, the lies.
He would say that he was worth $100 million.
It's an incredibly cynical episode in American politics, beyond satire.
Had you ever seen anything like this?
No, and I hope I never see it again.
Campaign of Deceit, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
She dazzled on the court and off the court as a businesswoman.
Thank you for joining us on Person to Person. Tennis superstar and entrepreneur Serena Williams.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
I asked my students, what are we going to do about racism in the United States?
The backlash over teaching about racism in American schools.
I don't think it has any place in the classroom.
We can either pretend and say, no, we're not racist and we're all great people, or we can actually start to do the really, really hard work of addressing it.
How did you lose your job? I made the statement that white privilege is a fact.
Is it helping diversity and inclusion?
When you bring in different people's stories and experience, it enriches education.
If you don't talk about something, it doesn't go away.
Or driving us further apart?
What schools are doing to our children in the name of anti-racism is in fact teaching them racism.
The intention is to put us in this war against each other.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
I was entitled to equal pay for equal work under the law.
Does the Supreme Court's power need to be checked?
9 Supreme Court justices, 5 of them said no, she's not entitled. That's not right.
Calls to fix the court tend to go along with the politics of the moment.
Republican-appointed justices have all tended to go in one direction, with the Democratic-appointed justices tending to go in another.
Even though it's only 9 justices, it takes 5 of them to make the law of the land.
Does it have political impact? True. Political intent? Probably not true.
If the American people don't trust the judgment of their court, that's a real problem for our democracy.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
And welcome back to Red and Blue. Republicans have been reacting to former President Trump's possible indictment. This morning, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis commented on it for the first time.
So you're talking about this situation with, and look, I don't know what goes into paying hush money to a porn star to secure silence over some type of alleged affair. I can't speak to that.
All right, CBS News political director Finn Gomez joins us now for more. So, Finn, a little bit of a dig at the former president there, while also rushing to his defense. What does that all mean? And what kind of impact is this all going to have on his 2024 presidential bid? Trump's, that is.
Right. I think it's notable after weeks of Trump hammering on different issues. His potential rival finally took a swipe at the early frontrunner in this stage. Of course, DeSantis has not jumped into the race yet. He's expected after the legislative session. But I really think it was interesting because he is trying to toe the line between being part of that united front, almost taking talking points from the Trump social media platform posts, but at the same time making some space, showing that he is in Tallahassee. He's working as a governor while there's this, Trump involved in this yet another investigation, a scandal, and trying to separate himself from the controversy you see in the Trump world to what he's doing in Florida.
Yeah, it's such an interesting contrast now that you say it, kind of that split screen of where they're talking from, too. I mean, for Trump, you could imagine a scenario where this does help rally Republicans to his cause, but at the same time, you don't want to be running for president while facing an indictment. What kind of impact is this having on him and his candidacy?
Like initially, it spoke to the Trump campaign and other rival camps who say this will potentially help him politically. You're looking at the Mar-a-Lago search from last year, that his poll numbers went up, the base rallied around him. You could see that same effect. But who knows how long that will last? Yeah, the biggest open question, and we'll stay tuned for all of it. Finn Gomez, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time and reporting. And that does it for us today. You can stream Red and Blue Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. You're streaming CBS News.
In today's Money Watch, business analyst Jill Schlesinger is here to help.
How do you even begin to make the best use of your money?
If you've got a match from your employer, don't give away that money.
Dollar Jill, y'all.
CBS Mornings, starting at 7.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.